one woman, a reporter in New York City, a reporter who knew too much.
All right, panel, as you know, in the case of our mystery challenger, we go to the different form of questioning.
I was able to show that Dorothy Kilgallen was one of 400 reporters who was at the Jack Ruby trial. She interviewed Jack Ruby, the only one to do so.
Interviewed by one reporter throughout the trial, Dorothy Kilgallen. Since her interview with Ruby, many noted that Kilgallen carried a file with her at all times. It remained under lock and key when not physically in her hands, according to those close to her.
So Dorothy decided, whatever Ruby told her, to go to New Orleans. And that's where Carlos Marcello ruled, and that empire of his stretched on into Dallas, of course. They found a bottle of Seconal next to her bed. They sent a junior detective there. He decided that she had died of an overdose. And what was leaked to the press was that she died of an overdose of drugs, overdose of barbiturates, circumstances undetermined. One woman, a reporter in New York City, who I had never heard of, frankly. And the only time I did is when I was talking to one of Belli's friends, and he said, well, you know how you need to look into these things. You need to find out about Dorothy Kilgallen. And I said, wait a minute, I don't know who she is. Mark, you should know. She's the big deal. She was not only a star performer on the What's My Line television on CBS every Sunday night at 10 o'clock for 15 years. She had a syndicated column in the New York Journal-American that was syndicated to 200 newspapers across the country. She was had a radio show listened to by 1 million people, but she was at the Jack Ruby trial. And I said, what? He said, yes. She was a very close friend of Jack Kennedy. He had invited her and her young son Kerry to the White House and all of that, and you need to look in more to her. So I started my investigation, and that became the best-selling book you talked about, The Reporter Who Knew Too Much. And through Dorothy's eyes then, and I like to do that when I can with these primary sources, through Dorothy's eyes, as people will read in all of the books, but especially in the last few, Abuse of Power and Collateral Damage. If you look at it through Dorothy Kilgallen's eyes, you get a different perspective. You get a different perspective of Marilyn's death, of JFK's death, of Dorothy's own death, and then Bobby Kennedy. Because you find out that you can look at them in context with each other. An awful lot of research look at them individually. And so, unfortunately, they aren't able to really put them all together and connect what happened. So the next thing that happened is this lawyer down in Fresno, California, sent me an email. He said, Mark, you know about the JFK assassination, I mean, the Jack Ruby trial transcripts, don't you? And I said, no, I should. He said, well, I found a copy of them in an old library down here, and I want you to look at them. So I started to do that, and I was amazed because in that book became Denial of Justice. And in that particular book, I was able to show that Dorothy Kilgallen was one of 400 reporters who was at the Jack Ruby trial. She interviewed Jack Ruby, the only one to do so. She interviewed Jesse Curry, and we'll talk about him in a minute because he's a big key to what happened in Dealey Plaza. And then I looked into Denial of Justice because in here there is a verifiable account of Jack Ruby being on the telephone the day before he shot Lee Harvey Oswald, explaining to whoever he's talking to that he will be there when Lee Harvey Oswald is being paraded through Dallas Police headquarters. Well, that changes everything if you think about it. It wasn't Oswald, the whole situation where he just happened by the police department and shot Oswald. That was planned. You get to Dorothy Kilgallen's death. And I was able to prove that this woman, I just want to backtrack just a minute so people know who she was a little bit more. When JFK died, and it was personal, she went to L.A. She interviewed Jack Ruby. She interviewed Jesse Curry. His book is right over here. He told her that the shots came from the overpass. So she didn't believe any of that junk about Oswald alone or any of it. And then she decided, wait a minute, Ruby told her I think kind of confessed to her in terms of what happened. We will never know what he exactly told her, unfortunately, because when she died in 1965, her JFK assassination files and her the book manuscript that she was writing for Random House, a tell-all book, were both missing. And we'll get into her death in just a minute, or yes, we can. So Dorothy decided, whatever Ruby told her, to go to New Orleans. And that's where Carlos Marcello ruled. And that empire of his stretched on into Dallas, of course. And that's how he ended up using Ruby and using Oswald. So I got to thinking about that, and I went ahead and one day I thought, how about Dorothy Kilgallen's death? I have proved that this gentleman named Ron Pataki, who was a romantic interest of her later in her life, when her husband and she were estranged. He was an alcoholic. He was the only person that she shared her JFK assassination information with. She's the only one who was able to get Jack Ruby's testimony at the Warren Commission. She shared all that with him. And then I was able to prove that he had leaked it to the wrong people because he had gambling debts. That'll come into the Robert Kennedy assassination. And Marcello was able then to pressurize and compromise him into setting up Dorothy Kilgallen for the kill. And what happened with that was that when she was getting too close to the truth and she told her friends, if the wrong people knew what I know about the assassination, it would cost me my life. I bought a gun and all of that. About not too long later, she was found dead in her Manhattan townhouse, in a bed she never slept in, wearing her hairpiece, her eye makeup and everything. Looked like she was going on a date. They found a bottle of Seconal next to her bed. They sent a junior detective there. He decided that she had died of an overdose. And what was leaked to the press was that she died of an overdose of drugs, overdose of barbiturates, circumstances undetermined. Now, unfortunately, that particular communique to the media made everyone believe she was a druggie who killed herself. And that ruined Dorothy's reputation. In fact, when I took up working on The Reporter Who Knew Too Much, I could find nothing about her since 1965 because it tainted her reputation, and I've been trying to restore that reputation ever since.
You even touched on it earlier. You hadn't heard of her. I had never heard of her. I bet most people watching this video had never heard of her. And yet she was in that day. This was not like some small-time reporter or somebody who was like well-known in just journalistic circles. Yep. This was a very famous journalistic celebrity who not only was famous for being on TV and being quippy and funny and being, fun to watch, but was also a dogged, really well, hardworking reporter who was really, really highly respected in that world. You talked about a little bit the way that she died, people thinking that it was an overdose, and that kind of tainted her, the memory of her. I also am curious about, you mentioned it a little bit in the book, the fact, and every time I read a quote that, and you talk about this too, like there's meaning to be complimentary to her, with somebody back then being like, oh, she's one of the best female reporters out there, as opposed to, Jill, she's just one of the best reporters out there. There seemed to be just, even back then, they took her seriously, but maybe not as seriously as if she was a man. How much of the attitudes of maybe the fact that she was also a celebrity and a woman contributed to the fact that people just didn't pay heed to what she was saying, even back then, and certainly not in the years since?
No, and I've run into that too, because I've said, I'm Dorothy in some ways in terms of what I'm going to be doing. She overcame gender discrimination. She was a college dropout. Her father was a famous reporter at the New York Evening Journal at the time it was called, and she got a shot as an intern, and she showed how well she was doing. But for instance, when it came time to covering the Lindbergh baby kidnapping case, they wouldn't let her in the courtroom. They had her babysit Lindbergh's wife. So it's very interesting you'd bring that up, because I think, back then, gender discrimination just ran rampant. And with Dorothy, there was just an awful lot of people, and there still are today, who don't want to believe what she said. And that we want to relate. I want to talk about the task force again, and Jefferson Morley and Luna, because they basically have just ignored anything that I've sent to them, even a conversation with Congressman Luna and all of that. because I don't think they believe that Dorothy is reliable with regard to what she said. Now, I'm hoping that a couple things may wake them up. Number one, in November, I got a call from a New York City councilman. He and I had tried a couple years earlier to get a new investigation of Dorothy's death because there never was one. And we tried to do it with Alvin Bragg, the New York District Attorney. We were unsuccessful. But he sent me an email and he said, "Mark, I know this will brighten your day." And he told me that the New York City Council was going to rename the intersection, the street intersection at Park Avenue and East 68th Street, where Dorothy used to live, as Dorothy Kilgallen Way.
That's cool.
And my health is not the best in terms of my mobility, but I would have crawled back to New York for this ceremony that they had. And these are some of the things that, this was the flyer for it. And they said, "Join us as we honor the extraordinary legacy of Dorothy Kilgallen, pioneering journalist, author, and fearless voice for truth. Her groundbreaking career in print and television broke barriers for women in media, and her commitment to investigative reporting made a lasting impact on American journalism. We proudly recognize her life, work, and contributions to our city and our nation with this special code naming ceremony." And in the program, the one thing that they said that really hit home was they wrote, "Before there were media icons Barbara Walters, Diane Sawyer, and Oprah, there was celebrated journalist Dorothy Kilgallen, who overcame gender discrimination, leading the New York Post to call her the most powerful female voice in America." Now, the person you were talking about that was an admirer of hers was Ernest Hemingway, and he said she was the greatest female or woman writer in the world at that time. Dorothy would have appreciated the comment, but she would have hated the whole situation with regard to the use of her being a female or whatever. Because back then, women were not even supposed to be in the back seat. They were supposed to be in the car or two behind. But she interviewed Queen Elizabeth on the coronation. She handled the Dr. Sam Shepard case in 1954, became the Fugitive movie.
Fugitive, yeah.
Yeah, she was a big deal for sure. And I'm proud to say that the other thing that Dorothy did in 1936, this is the first time I've talked about this on the air, 1936, there was something called the Race Around the World. And it's not that well known today, but back then, and I think I put a couple excerpts in the book, it was a big deal. They decided that they wanted to show that the world had shortened, and so they would have competitors who could only use transportation, commercial transportation, open to the general public, cars, buses, trains, primitive aircraft, and all of that. Well, Dorothy entered that competition against two older male journalists, one from the New York Times and the other one from the World Telegram. And she went around the world. And what they did is they left in New York City on the Hindenburg. They went to Paris, they went to London, Germany, and then all the way around to Indochina, where she almost lost her life in a plane accident, all the way around to Hawaii, and then to New York, to San Francisco and New York City. And along the way, Dorothy wrote this book called Girl Around the World. And I searched for it forever to see if I could do something with that book. And it was full of her dispatches that she sent every day to the New York Journal-American, talking about what she did that day, and it's just a historical treasure. I finally found the publisher of the book, and I was able to get them to agree to let me republish it. And I will do that in September, the 90th anniversary of the Race Around the World. And,
That's amazing.
I wanted it as a tribute to Dorothy. In fact, people say I'm crazy, but I kind of told her that I would do this. So that's going to come out, and that's going to kind of give another view of everything that happened that way. But if you look at everything through Dorothy Kilgallen's eyes, if you just keep your eyes open, and I don't try to tell people what to think. I try to say stop and think. Because what happened to Dorothy back in 1963, when she was the only one writing these columns like "The Oswald File Must Not Close," she questioned the killing of the policeman, all that kind of stuff. Nobody would listen to her for various reasons, but mainly, I think, because she was a female. People didn't ask the right questions back then. And when people ask me the relevancies of these books now, it's the fact that we must ask questions of the government. Couldn't be any clearer than right now in terms of what's happening, even with this latest well, I'll call it a war. Sometimes the administration doesn't, but you've got that's happened. We need to ask questions about that. Don't just sit back and say, all right, yeah, we understand what you did and we're going to take your word for it. They made those mistakes back then. We make it today with all kinds of issues and everything. And if they had even in any way, they never invited Dorothy to the Warren Commission.